Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. This time, we're diving into the story of the Rani of Jhansi. A listener wrote in, and, well, she's become kind of an obsession for them, and they wanted us to, really dig deep.
Sounds like a fascinating figure. I'm ready to dive in. So, 19th century India, British East India Company, resistance. Where do we even start?
Yeah, so we've got a ton of sources here, historical accounts, scholarly articles, even some literary pieces. Should keep us busy for a while.
Sounds good to me. The more perspectives, the better.
Right. So it's 1857. The British East India Company, they're really tightening their grip on India. And the Rani of Jhansi, she's about to become this symbol of defiance that, well, it echoes through history even today.
What intrigues me is how her story goes beyond just, military battles and conquests.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's about leadership, it's about symbolism, it's about challenging, like, the very idea of a woman's place in society in 19th century India. It's fascinating.
It really is. Okay, so first things first. Who was this Rani of Jhansi? I mean, I know she wasn't, like, born a rebel leader, right?
Yeah, her birth name was Manikarnika Tambe, and her early life is actually pretty remarkable in itself. Think about it. 19th century India, you wouldn't exactly expect to find a young woman, especially one of royal lineage, training in horsemanship, swordsmanship, or military tactics.
That's pretty unusual, yeah.
Totally. It's, let me see. Yeah, source number really highlights just how unique this was for the time. It kind of foreshadows her later actions.
So she's already breaking the mold even before the British really enter the picture.
Exactly. Then she marries the Maharaja of Jhansi.
And that's where things take a turn, right?
Exactly. The British East India Company, they had this policy called the Doctrine of Lapse.
Doctrine of Lapse. Remind me how that worked again.
Basically, if an Indian ruler died without a male heir, the company could just, annex their territory.
Oh, right. That's how they justified taking over so much land.
Exactly. The Rani's husband, he had adopted a son, but the British, nope, they refused to recognize him as the heir.
Talk about a convenient excuse for expansion.
Right. You can practically hear them scheming. Actually, source number lays out Lord Dalhousie's reasoning. He states, and I quote, direct quote from source.
Wow. That's just bold. So I take it the Rani wasn't too happy about this.
You can say that again in one of her letters. It's in source number. She basically says, hold on a minute. This is outrageous.
She had some fire in her, huh?
Oh, yeah. She wasn't about to just sit back and let this happen. She started preparing Jhansi's defenses, rallying her forces, fortifying the fort, the whole 9 yards.
This is where things start to get really exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Buckle up. Because in 1857, the Sepoy Mutiny explodes across India, this huge uprising against British rule. And the Rani of Jhansi, well, let's just say she wasn't known for staying on the sidelines.
No way. So what did she do? I mean, was she actually leading troops into battle, or was she more of a symbolic figurehead?
Leading troops, absolutely. We have accounts from both Indian and British source number, that describe her as this incredible horsewoman, a fierce swordswoman, a brilliant military strategist.
Wow.
Yeah, she wasn't just inspiring her troops with speeches, she was out there fighting alongside them.
No kidding. That image of her, charging into battle, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
No wonder she became such a symbol of resistance against the British.
Exactly. And that symbolism didn't just fade away after her death.
Oh, yeah. It feels like her story, it's kind of woven into the fabric of Indian culture, right?
Exactly. And source number really dives into how her story, it was kept alive through songs, poems, plays, even oral histories passed down generation after generation. Even during British rule, she became this national heroine, this figure of inspiration for everyone who dreamed of a free India.
It's really incredible how a single person's story can have such a lasting impact. But, okay, let's take a step back for a second and try to understand, the context of all this. What was it like to be a woman in 19th century India?
Well, it was pretty restrictive, especially for women of royal status. There were all these societal norms and expectations in their lives. They were mostly confined to, family and household duties. Source number gives a really vivid picture of this.
So I'm guessing leading armies and, engaging in political maneuvering, not exactly part of the job description, right?
Definitely not. By taking on this leadership role in such a public and powerful way, the Rani, she was directly challenging all of that.
She was fighting on so many levels then, against the British, against these societal norms, for her people, even for her adopted son's inheritance.
Exactly. It makes her story even more incredible, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But before we get too carried away, we need to ground this discussion in the specifics of the sources you've brought. How did people perceive her, both back then and more recently?
That's a great point. It's time to dive into those sources. We've got historical accounts, scholarly articles, even some literary works. It's like piecing together a puzzle.
Love a good history puzzle. Let's get started. So, one thing that struck me was how even some British officials, her adversaries, acknowledged her, like her courage and her charisma.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like they were in awe of her. In
Mhm.
a source number, there's this British officer, and you can kind of hear this begrudging admiration in his writing. They might have considered her an enemy, but they couldn't deny her strength and determination.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
It is, isn't it? They recognized that she was a force to be reckoned with, someone who commanded respect, even from those trying to subjugate her people.
Okay, that's fascinating. But her influence didn't stop there, right? What about her impact on, like, nationalist narratives in India?
Oh, huge. As India moved towards independence in the 20th century, the Rani, she became this powerful symbol for the nationalist movement. Source number really goes into detail about how her story, her fight against colonial rule, it resonated so deeply with those who were striving for a free India.
So she wasn't just a historical figure. She was like an inspiration for those actively fighting for independence.
Exactly. Source number even shows how her image was used on posters, pamphlets, speeches during that time. She was more than just a memory, she was a call to action.
Wow, that's powerful.
And that symbolism, it didn't fade away after India gained independence in 1947. She's still celebrated as a national heroine. I mean, her story is taught in schools. There are statues of her everywhere. She pops up in popular culture all the time. Source number goes into all of that.
She's a timeless icon. It's amazing. But her story also has these deeper layers, right?
You're getting it. Think about the impact she had on gender roles and perceptions of women in India.
Right. It's pretty inspiring. Source number talks about that.
She's seen as a trailblazer, someone who smashed those barriers and showed that women, they're just as capable of leadership, courage, and strength as men.
She was a feminist icon before the term even existed.
Exactly. Her actions, they challenged those traditional roles assigned to women and inspired generations of women to strive for equality. It's a powerful legacy.
It really is. But we can't forget that no historical figure exists in, like, a vacuum, right? We've got to see how her story connects with the broader themes of Indian history and culture. What stands out to you?
One of the most significant connections is that broader theme of resistance against colonial rule in India. Her story is just one chapter in this long and complex saga of Indians pushing back against British domination.
So she's part of this collective memory of resistance.
Precisely. Her story is woven into the fabric of Indian history. It reminds us of that long and arduous journey to independence, but it also connects to themes of cultural identity and preserving Indian traditions in the face of colonial influence. That's a point made in source number. Her fight, it wasn't just about political power. It was about protecting Indian culture, their values, their ways of life.
It's like she was fighting for the soul of India.
That's a great way to put it. Her resistance was about preserving that essence of Indian identity in the face of cultural assimilation. It's powerful stuff.
Okay, so we've established that the Rani of Jhansi, she was a remarkable woman who challenged both British rule and societal norms. But as we start digging into these sources, what are some of the things we should keep in mind as we analyze them?
Good question. I think one key challenge is that a lot of the sources we have, they're filtered through the lens of either, British colonialism or Indian nationalism. So I have to be aware of potential biases.
Ah, right, like reading between the lines.
Exactly. We need to approach these sources critically, considering the author's perspective, the historical context, all of that. Like source number, it kind of downplays her military skills, while source number, it might romanticize them a bit.
So it's about finding the truth somewhere in between.
Right. Our goal is to arrive at a nuanced and balanced understanding of the Rani, recognizing both her strengths and any weaknesses she might have had.
Because history is rarely black and white.
Never. And another challenge, some of these stories might be based on oral traditions or folk tales, passed down through generations.
So separating historical fact from legend.
Exactly. It's like peeling back layers of interpretation to get closer to that core historical truth.
Sounds tricky, but also fascinating.
Oh, it is. It requires some healthy skepticism and a good dose of critical thinking, especially with a figure like the Rani of Jhansi, whose story has been so closely tied to both colonial narratives and nationalist mythology.
Well said. Okay, so One of the first sources that caught my eye was, let me see. Ah, yes. The History of the Bengali Language. Now, it's not directly about the Rani, but it got me thinking about.
Um, are you sure about that one? Remember, we want to stay focused on the Rani herself. The history of the Bengali language. That seems a little off topic for this deep dive, don't you think?
Yeah, you're right. I got a little sidetracked there. Sorry about that. It's easy to get lost in the rabbit hole of history sometimes.
It happens to the best of us. Let's stick to the heart of the matter. The Rani of Jhansi, and how she became this powerful symbol of resistance.
Agreed. Okay, so how about we look at, let me see. Ah, this one looks promising. An academic paper titled A History of State and Religion in India. Now, this one delves into,
It looks at how religion, it played a role in, legitimizing political authority in India, especially in those periods before British rule really took hold.
okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
But the Rani, she was fighting against colonial power, not like trying to establish traditional authority.
Yeah, true, true. But think about the context. Source number, it talks about how Indian rulers, they often drew on religious symbolism, rituals to like connect with their subjects. It's possible that the Rani, even while resisting the British, she might have used some of those same traditional symbols, to rally support, legitimize her own claim to power.
So she was navigating this complex web of political and religious allegiances, trying to be both a defender of tradition and a leader of this resistance movement.
Exactly. It suggests a really like strategic mind at work.
Yeah.
Someone trying to bridge that gap between the old and the new. Maybe she was even using the language of tradition to mobilize support for a very modern fight against colonialism.
That's a really interesting observation. It adds a whole new layer to our understanding of her leadership. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Oh, this source caught my eye. Architecture of Mughal India. Now, it's about, architectural styles during the Mughal Empire, which, of course, came before the British. But
I see where you're going with this. The Mughals, they built these grand mosques, palaces, forts, all to project power and authority. Source number dives into all that symbolism behind those structures. So think about the Rani. She was fighting against this much larger power, but did she also use architecture, symbolism, to project her own authority, rally her people?
that's a really cool connection. It suggests that she understood the power of visual symbols, even beyond just, military strategy.
Exactly. She might have been using that visual language of power, something familiar to her people, to strengthen her position. It speaks to her awareness of how to leverage existing cultural elements for her cause.
Okay, so we're seeing this pattern emerge where the Rani, she was really skilled at like blending the old and the new,
Yeah.
using tradition to fuel this very modern fight. It adds another dimension to her resistance beyond just military action.
Absolutely. It makes her an even more complex and fascinating figure to study, don't you think?
Definitely. Okay, let's switch gears for a second and look at some sources that tackle, the broader political landscape of 19th century India. One that I found really helpful was source title. It talks about how this period, it was just this time of like major upheaval with the rise of these regional states and, of course, the growing influence of the British East India Company.
It really sets the stage for the Rani's story, doesn't it? The Mughal Empire was weakening, and you had all these regional powers. They were all trying to, like, fill that power vacuum. It was like a giant game of chess with all these players making their moves.
And then you've got the British East India Company just like adding another layer of complexity to this already volatile situation.
Exactly. And the company. They were smart. They were exploiting those rivalries, making alliances, and slowly, expanding their own influence. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about this shrewd political maneuvering economic control.
So where does the Rani of Jhansi fit into this larger game?
She was one of those regional leaders who saw the threat posed by the company. She understood that they weren't just content with trade anymore. They wanted complete control. And like source number points out, her resistance, it was part of this larger trend of Indian rulers pushing back against the company's, ever-growing power.
So her story, even though it focuses on this one region, one specific time period, it really speaks to these bigger themes, right? Colonialism, resistance, the fight for power.
Absolutely. It's like a microcosm of what was happening all over India at the time.
Okay, another source I found fascinating was source title. It focuses on the British East India Company's activities in Bengal, which is like a key region for them.
Bengal was crucial. It was a major trading hub, especially for textiles. Source number details how the company, they used their economic power in Bengal to influence local politics, and eventually they took over the administration completely. They basically turned Bengal into their own, money-making machine.
Wow, that's pretty ruthless.
Mm.
But how does this tie back to the Rani? I mean, she was ruling in central India, not Bengal, right?
True, but what happened in Bengal didn't stay in Bengal. The company's tactics there, their strategies, their ruthlessness, it all became a blueprint for how they would expand across the rest of India.
So the Rani, along with all these other Indian rulers, she was essentially dealing with the fallout of what the company had already accomplished in Bengal.
Exactly. Her resistance, it was shaped in part by the company's previous successes and the methods they had used to achieve them. It just adds another layer of complexity to her story, doesn't it?
It really does. It's like she wasn't just battling the immediate threat of the British in her own region. She was also up against this larger, more insidious system that was like spreading its tentacles across India.
Precisely. It broadens our understanding of the challenges she faced and the significance of her resistance. Now, let's touch on something a bit more sensitive. Have you looked at the material on the Hindu Mahasabha?
Yeah, I did. It's tricky, though, right? Source number talks about this political organization that emerged during British rule, and they advocated for Hindu interests. But the Rani, she lived long before the Hindu Mahasabha was even founded. So how do we connect these two?
You're right. It's not a direct connection, but
Right.
it's important to understand how the Rani's image, it was later used by groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. They saw her as like the symbol of Hindu strength against, foreign rule, and they incorporated her into their own narrative.
So they were basically appropriating her story for their own political purposes.
To some extent, yeah. And it's something we always need to be aware of when we study historical figures. Their legacies, they can be shaped and reshaped over time to fit different agendas. It's our job to be critical of those narratives and try to understand the motivations behind them.
That's a really good point. It's like a reminder that history, it's always being reinterpreted, and those interpretations, they can be influenced by current events, present-day politics, all sorts of things. It's easy to project modern ideas onto the past without even realizing it.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's look at a source that provides like a broader overview of Indian history and politics. Source title. It covers a lot of ground from colonial rule all the way to independence and beyond.
Right, and even though it doesn't focus specifically on the Rani, it gives us a helpful framework for understanding those larger historical forces that were like shaping events during her lifetime.
Exactly. It reminds us that she wasn't operating in isolation. Her struggle was part of this much bigger, more complex story of India's fight for freedom and self-determination.
Okay, let's move on to the cultural and religious landscape of 19th century India. I was really interested in this book, India, A Sacred Geography. It talks about how important like rivers, mountains, temples are in Hindu belief.
Ah, yes. India's religious landscape is incredibly rich and diverse, and that book, it highlights how geography and spirituality are so deeply intertwined in Indian culture. It's almost like the land itself holds this sacred meaning.
But how does this connect back to the Rani? I mean, I don't remember her being particularly known for like her religious devotion.
Right, true. But remember, we're trying to understand the cultural and religious milieu that she was living in, and source number provides that context. Her actions, even though they were politically motivated, they might have resonated with people who saw her as a defender of their traditions and their beliefs against this foreign power.
So even if she wasn't explicitly religious in her resistance, people could have interpreted her actions through that lens.
Exactly. It shows how history is shaped not just by objective facts, but by perceptions and interpretations. It's fascinating, really.
Okay, I found this other book about geography, Indian geography.
Yeah.
It covers like all the physical features, climate, natural resources, you name it.
That's a great resource. Understanding the environmental context of the Rani story is important. India is such a vast and diverse country, and those variations, they've profoundly shaped its history and culture.
Okay, but getting back to the Rani, her kingdom was pretty small, right? How does her story connect with this broader geographic picture?
Think about it this way. Source number, it helps us understand how geographical factors they might have actually influenced her decisions. For example, it talks about how rivers, they were essential for agriculture, for transportation. Controlling those water resources, that would have been crucial for defending her kingdom.
Ah, so her military strategies, they might have been shaped by the actual geography of her region.
Absolutely. And the book, it also talks about the challenges of governing such a large and diverse country, the difficulties of communication and transportation. Those were the same challenges that the Rani faced when she was trying to forge alliances with other rulers.
That's a really interesting point. It shows how geography, it can shape not just military strategy, but also like the whole political landscape.
Exactly. It's a reminder that history, it's influenced by this whole range of factors, including the physical environment.
Okay, here's a source that uh, I'm not sure about the Dravidian languages. Now, I know the Rani, she's from a Marathi-speaking family, and Marathi is an Indo-Aryan language, not a Dravidian one. So how does this fit in?
You're right to point that out. But remember, context is key. This source, while not about the Rani directly, it helps us understand the incredible linguistic diversity of India and the challenges of communicating across those different language groups. The Rani, she might have faced those same challenges when she was trying to, build alliances with other rulers who spoke different languages.
So language barriers, those could have been a real obstacle for her.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to negotiate treaties or coordinate military actions with someone who speaks a totally different language. It definitely adds another layer of complexity to her story.
It does. It's like we're starting to see the Rani's world through these new eyes,
Yeah.
considering all these factors that might have shaped her decisions, her actions.
Exactly. It makes her story all the more compelling.
It really does. It's a good reminder that history, it's so much more than just dates and battles. It's about people, their relationships, the environments they lived in, and this complex web of factors that influence their choices.
Well said. Now, speaking of people, have you had a chance to look at that collection of letters written by the Rani herself?
Oh, yeah. They're amazing. They're so personal, so insightful. It's like we get a glimpse into her private thoughts and feelings, beyond the public image of this warrior queen.
I agree. Those letters are a treasure trove of information. They reveal a woman of intelligence, wit, and incredible determination.
Exactly. And it's fascinating to see how she expresses her concerns for her kingdom, her love for her adopted son, and her frustrations with the British. It humanizes her.
Absolutely. She wasn't just this political figure or this military leader. She was also a mother, a wife, a woman who cared deeply about her people. Those letters help us see her as this complex and multifaceted individual.
Right. It's like we're getting to know her on a more personal level,
Yeah.
beyond the legends and the historical accounts.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even the most, powerful and influential figures, they're still human beings with their own unique thoughts, feelings, and experiences.
Okay, there's also this memoir. It was written by one of her close advisors, a woman who served as like a confidant and companion.
That's a fantastic source. It gives us a different perspective on the Rani, one that's much closer to her personal life and relationships.
Right. It paints this picture of her as this charismatic and inspiring leader who commanded the loyalty and respect of everyone around her.
It's like we're getting a firsthand account of her leadership style, her ability to connect with people and inspire them to action.
Right. And the memoir also gives us these little glimpses into her personal life, her struggles, her triumphs, the sacrifices she made. It's a really intimate portrait.
It's a valuable reminder that even the most powerful people, they face personal challenges and experience a whole range of emotions. They're not, immune to the ups and downs of life.
Okay, here's one that I found particularly interesting. A travelogue written by a British officer who visited Jhansi during the Rani's reign.
Oh, wow. That's a unique perspective. It's like getting a glimpse into how she was perceived by someone from, the other side of the conflict.
Exactly. And what's surprising is that the travelogue actually praises the Rani. It talks about her administrative skills, her concern for her subjects' well-being. It describes Jhansi as this prosperous and well-governed kingdom.
That's fascinating. It suggests that even within the colonial establishment, there were people who recognized her capabilities as a ruler.
Right. It challenges that typical colonial narrative that often portrays Indian rulers as incompetent or tyrannical. And the travelogue, it also describes the Rani as this striking and impressive figure, someone with intelligence, charisma, this regal bearing.
It reinforces her image as this formidable and commanding presence.
Definitely. It's like we're getting this more multifaceted picture of her emerging, one that goes beyond those simplistic labels of hero and villain,
Yeah.
colonizer and colonized.
Exactly. And that's what makes history so fascinating. It's not about, black and white narratives. It's about understanding the complexities, the nuances, the different perspectives that shape our understanding of the past.
Okay, this next source offers a more critical perspective. It's a historical analysis written by a contemporary scholar who kind of challenges some of the traditional narratives about the Rani.
A little healthy skepticism. That's always good. It's important to question those narratives, especially when they've been, shaped by things like nationalist sentiment or colonial biases.
Exactly. And the scholar, they raise some really interesting points. For example, they argue that some of the stories about the Ranis, like military prowess,
Yeah.
they might be exaggerated or, romanticized over time.
It's like they're urging us to look beyond the myths and legends and to see the Rani as a real person, a historical figure with both, strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And they also point out that we need to be aware of the political and social context that those stories were created in.
Yeah.
They might tell us more about the needs and aspirations of the people who told them than about the Rani herself.
That's a crucial point. It's a reminder that history, it's always being interpreted and reinterpreted, and those interpretations can be influenced by all sorts of factors.
And the scholar also argues that, we need to be honest about the limitations of her resistance. She was ultimately defeated by the British. And while her rebellion was significant, it didn't lead to immediate independence for India.
It's a more nuanced perspective. It recognizes both her contributions and the limitations of her actions. It helps us see her as this real person operating within a very complex and challenging historical context.
Definitely. And the scholar also raises some important questions about gender dynamics. They argue that even though the Rani's story is incredibly inspiring, we shouldn't use it to ignore the systemic inequalities that still, limit women's opportunities today.
That's a really insightful observation. It reminds us that even those who challenge gender stereotypes, they're still operating within a larger system, a patriarchal system. And that system needs to be addressed and ultimately dismantled.
Okay, let's move on to some sources that explore how the Rani story is being remembered and reinterpreted in modern India.
I'm curious about this one. A collection of essays by Indian historians and cultural critics.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're going to get a wide range of perspectives on the Rani's, her significance, her impact, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. They cover everything from her military strategies to her impacts on feminist movements. And what's really interesting is how they highlight her enduring popularity in India. Even today, her story, it resonates with people because it speaks to these themes of courage, resistance, the fight for justice.
It's like she's become this timeless symbol of the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity.
Right. And the essays, they also explore how her story has been adapted and reinterpreted over time. Different generations have found new meanings in her life, reflecting changing social and political contexts.
It just goes to show that history is a dynamic process. It's not, it's not static. It's constantly being revisited, reinterpreted as new generations grapple with the legacies of the past.
Okay, this one looks interesting. A documentary film titled The Legacy of Jhansi Ki Rani, Echoes in Modern India. It looks at how her story continues to inspire people in India today, especially women.
I bet that's powerful to see how her story resonates with people on such a personal level, especially those who are, actively fighting for social justice.
Oh, it is. The documentary, it interviews this diverse group of people, historians, activists, artists, ordinary citizens, each one sharing how the Rani story has impacted their own lives.
It's like they're weaving together this tapestry of perspectives, showing how her story continues to touch people from all walks of life.
And it's particularly inspiring for women in India, many of whom see her as this role model for courage, leadership, determination.
It makes sense. Her defiance of patriarchal norms and her willingness to fight for her people, it makes her a potent symbol for women's empowerment.
And the documentary, it also explores how her story has been, kind of used by various social movements in India, from women's rights to environmental justice.
It's like her story's become a rallying cry for anyone struggling for a more just and equitable society.
Speaking of rallying cries, the Rani story, it's also made its way into popular culture. There's this graphic novel, it's called Jhansi, the Warrior Queen, that reimagines her life as this visually stunning and action-packed adventure.
I love that. It's a great way to introduce her story to a whole new generation.
Right, the graphic novel, it uses these vivid illustrations, and the storytelling is so dynamic, it creates a really immersive experience.
It's like you're stepping back in time and experiencing the Rani's world firsthand.
And it really emphasizes, her strength, her courage, her determination. She's portrayed as this powerful and inspiring figure who defied those gender stereotypes and fought for her people's freedom.
It's like they've taken her legendary status and amplified it, making her an even more compelling and iconic figure.
And it also touches on those themes of colonialism, resistance, and the struggle for identity,
Yeah.
reminding readers of the complexities and the injustices of the British Raj.
It's a great way to engage with history through a different medium, making it more relatable, more relevant for modern audiences.
Okay, there's also a stage play. It's called The Sword of Jhansi, a queen's legacy that dramatizes her life.
Oh, that sounds incredible. I can only imagine how moving it must be to see her story unfold on stage.
It is. It's very powerful. The play, it really emphasizes her courage, her charisma, her deep connection with her people.
It's like they're bringing her to life in this visceral and emotional way. The audience gets to experience her struggles, her triumphs, firsthand.
Right, and the play also explores themes of patriotism, sacrifice, and the human spirit's ability to resist oppression. It's pretty powerful.
It's a reminder that, freedom isn't free. It often comes at a high cost, and those who fight for it, they deserve our respect and our admiration.
Okay, this one is really interesting. This video game, it's called Rani Rebellion, and players can actually step into the role of the Rani and lead her forces in battles against the British.
Wow, that's amazing. I love how creative people have been in finding new ways to tell her story and to reach new audiences.
Right, the game, it uses these incredible visuals and historically accurate settings, to create this really immersive experience.
It's like you're stepping back in time and experiencing the Rani's world firsthand.
And it really highlights, her strategic brilliance, her courage, her unwavering determination.
It's a great example of how history can be brought to life through interactive media, making it more engaging and more relevant, especially for younger generations.
Okay, let's look at a source that explores, the Rani's global legacy. There's a scholarly article called Beyond Borders, the Rani of Jhansi and her global legacy. And it examines how her story has resonated with people all over the world, not just in India.
That's fascinating. It speaks to the universal appeal of her story.
Right. The article, it argues that her story, while it's rooted in a specific historical context, it transcends cultural and geographic boundaries.
That makes sense. Her struggle against oppression, her fight for justice, they resonate with people who've experienced similar challenges, regardless of their background or where they're from.
And her story, it's been particularly inspiring for women all over the world, many of whom see her as a role model for leadership, strength, and determination.
She's become a global symbol of female empowerment. It's amazing how her legacy has gone beyond borders and inspired people across so many different cultures.
There's also this collection of interviews with women from different countries, all of whom have been inspired by her story.
It's wonderful to hear those diverse voices and to see how the Rani story has touched so many lives.
The women who were interviewed, they come from all walks of life, but they all share this deep admiration for the Rani's courage, her resilience, her commitment to fighting for what she believed in.
It's a testament to the power of her story, the power to transcend cultures and to inspire people around the world.
And it's also interesting to see how her story has challenged gender stereotypes and inspired women to break down those barriers.
She's a reminder that women are capable of anything they set their minds to, even when faced with, seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
And there are these incredible murals and street art pieces that have been created by artists from all over the world, all inspired by her.
That's a powerful way to celebrate her legacy and to share her story with with a wider audience. It's
Yeah.
taking history out of the textbooks and putting it right in front of people's eyes.
Right. The murals and the street art, they're so diverse in style and approach, but many of them, they feature images of her as this warrior, a leader, a symbol of resistance.
It's like they're reinterpreting her story for a new generation, using the language of art to make it relevant and inspiring for people today.
Okay, let's dive into some sources that focus specifically on the military aspects of her story.
Okay. Let's see. There's this analysis of her military tactics and strategies. It was written by a military historian who specializes in, 19th century Indian warfare. Sounds like a deep dive into her strategic thinking.
Exactly. The historian argues that even though she was facing a much larger and better equipped British army, she was a skilled tactician, a bold leader who knew how to make the most of her limited resources.
It really challenges that notion that she was just a figurehead. It suggests that she was actively involved in planning and executing those military operations.
Right. The historian points out that her forces, they often used their knowledge of the local terrain and their guerrilla warfare tactics to outmaneuver and harass the British.
It's a reminder that even when you're up against a stronger opponent, skill and strategy can still make a difference.
Okay, here's a collection of first-hand accounts written by British soldiers who actually fought against her forces during the 1857 uprising.
Wow, we're getting the enemy's perspective. That's always fascinating, even if it's likely to be, a bit biased.
Oh, definitely. And it is. But what's interesting is that many of these accounts, even with those biases, they express this grudging admiration for her courage, her determination, and the tenacity of her troops.
It's like even her opponents couldn't help but respect her fighting spirit.
Exactly. They recognized that she was a formidable adversary, someone who commanded respect even on the battlefield.
Okay, let's see. This source looks interesting. A study of the weaponry and the military technology used by the Rani's forces compared to that of the British Army.
Ah, that's a great way to understand the sheer scale of the challenges she was up against. It highlights the vast difference in military technology between the two sides.
Right. The British, they had advanced rifles, cannons, artillery, while the Rani's forces, they were relying on a mix of traditional weapons and whatever firearms they could, get their hands on.
It must have been incredibly difficult to fight against such a technologically superior enemy.
Absolutely. And the study also points out the logistical challenges she faced, in training her troops and maintaining a steady supply of weapons and ammunition.
It makes her accomplishments even more remarkable, considering all the obstacles she had to overcome.
It's a testament to her resourcefulness, her determination, her ability to inspire her troops even in the face of, such daunting odds.
Okay, let's look at some sources that provide a more visual perspective on her military exploits.
I love visuals. Images can be so powerful, sometimes even more so than written descriptions. What have we got?
We have a collection of paintings and illustrations depicting her battles against the British, as well as some photographs taken during the 1857 uprising.
Those are great resources. We can get a sense of how she was perceived by both her contemporaries and later generations through those.
Exactly. The paintings and illustrations, even though they might not be entirely historically accurate, they often portray her as this central figure in the rebellion, leading her troops into battle, defying the British with incredible courage.
It's like they're capturing the essence of her legendary status, the image of her as this warrior queen fighting for her people's freedom.
And the photographs, while they're limited in their scope, they offer these little glimpses into the realities of war. The destruction, the displacement of civilians, the human cost of the conflict.
It's a sobering reminder that history isn't just about grand narratives and glorious victories. It's also about the human toll, the suffering, and the lasting impact that conflicts have on individuals and communities.
Well said. Okay, let's move on to some sources that highlight the Rani's legacy through these creative mediums.
Yes. Art has this amazing ability to capture the essence of historical figures and to bring their stories to life in these new and compelling ways.
One that I found particularly moving was this collection of poems and songs that were written about her, both during her lifetime and in the years that followed.
That's a fantastic way to explore how she was perceived and remembered. What kind of themes and emotions do these poems and songs evoke?
They're filled with admiration for her bravery, grief over her loss and this fierce pride in her defiance. Some of them, they depict her as a goddess, others as this protective mother figure.
It's like she transcends being just a historical figure in these creative expressions. She becomes an embodiment of these larger ideals, these emotions.
Exactly. And it's so interesting to see how those artistic interpretations, they evolve over time. Early poems, they focus on her warrior spirit,
Yeah.
while later ones, especially those from the independence movement, they cast her as this symbol of India's struggle for freedom.
It's a perfect example of how history is constantly being reinterpreted,
Yeah.
to fit the needs and aspirations of the present.
Okay, another source that really sparked my imagination was a collection of folk tales and legends, the kind that are passed down through generations. And these were from the region where she ruled.
Ah, folklore. It's a window into the soul of a community and how they choose to remember their heroes. What did you find in those tales?
Oh, they're full of like these incredible feats of strength, daring escapes. She almost has these supernatural abilities. She's often portrayed as this protector of the weak, a champion of justice, a symbol of hope against oppression.
She becomes this almost mythical figure, doesn't she? Someone larger than life who embodies all the community's values, their aspirations.
Exactly. And even if some of the details might be a little, embellished over time, those stories, they show how deeply she impacted the popular imagination. She became the symbol of resistance and a source of immense pride.
It really speaks to the enduring power of her story. But after looking at all these sources, all these different perspectives, I can't help but wonder, what does her story mean for us, today? What can we learn from her life, from her legacy that's relevant to the challenges we face in the 21st century?
That's the big question, isn't it? Why should we care about a historical figure who lived, centuries ago?
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest takeaways, for me at least, is the importance of courage, of resilience in the face of adversity. I mean, she faced overwhelming odds, but she never gave up. She never stopped fighting for what she believed in.
And that's a message that transcends time, doesn't it? It reminds us that no matter how difficult things get, we always have a choice. We can choose to resist, to stand up for what's right, and to fight for a better world.
Absolutely. And her story is also this powerful reminder that leadership, it can come from anywhere.
Mhm.
A woman in a patriarchal society rose to become this powerful and respected leader.
It challenges our assumptions, doesn't it? About what a leader looks like, where they come from. Leadership, it's not about gender, it's not about social status, it's not about formal authority. It's about vision, courage, and the ability to inspire others to action.
And her story also highlights, the complexities of colonialism and its lasting impact on societies all over the world.
Mm.
Her fight, it wasn't just about, territorial control. It was about cultural identity, about economic justice, about self-determination.
It's a call to action for all of us, isn't it? To critically examine the legacies of colonialism and to actively work towards a more just and equitable world.
Well said. But her story, it's also a cautionary tale,
Yeah.
right? I mean, despite her courage, her determination, she was ultimately defeated by the British.
That's a good point. It reminds us that even the most valiant efforts, they don't always lead to immediate victory. But her story, even in defeat, it continues to inspire people centuries later.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
speaks to the power of resistance, the importance of fighting for what you believe in, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Couldn't agree more. Now, after diving into all these sources, all these different perspectives, I'm left with this thought. We've heard about the Rani, we've analyzed her actions, we've interpreted her legacy, but there's one voice that's missing.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. Her own voice. We haven't heard directly from her.
Exactly. We've pieced together this picture of her from, historical accounts, from scholarly analyses, from artistic interpretations, even from folklore, but we haven't actually heard her speak for herself. So here's a challenge for our listeners.
Okay, I like this.
Imagine you could have a conversation with the Rani of Jhansi. What would you ask her? What would you want to know about her life, her motivations, her hopes, her fears? What was it like to be a woman in her position, during such a tumultuous period in history?
That is a fantastic challenge. And by imagining that conversation, I think we might actually gain a much deeper understanding of her, not just as this historical figure, this icon, but as a human being.
Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about today. The Rani of Jhansi, a woman who defied expectations, who challenged those in power, and who became this enduring symbol of resistance that continues to inspire people all over the world. What a fascinating deep dive this has been.
It really has. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. We hope you've gained a new appreciation for the Rani of Jhansi, for her incredible story, and for the enduring power of her legacy. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.